There was a poster. It was taped to the walls of thousands of bedrooms. Every morning, it was the first thing many people saw before heading to school. The poster showed an orange and white Japanese coupe kicking up dust on a rally track with the name Celica emblazoned on the side. It didn't cost as much as a Ferrari, but it was the car anyone could truly dream about. There was a version anyone could buy at a dealership and another that won world championships. Same name, same car, two different worlds. For 36 years, the Toyota Celica was exactly that. The sports car that lets you believe that driving with excitement didn't require being a millionaire. More than 4 million units manufactured, 7 generations, 4 World Rally titles. And the day the factory closed, Toyota had no successor waiting. What happened between that poster and that silence began much earlier than most people imagine. You're about to discover how a car that won 4 World Rally Championships ended up being discontinued without anyone at Toyota publicly defending it. The official reason was that the market had changed and coupes were no longer selling. That's true, but it's only half the story. The other half begins 10 years before the demise, with 2 internal decisions Toyota made when the Celica was still relevant. Decisions that doomed it long before sales figures reflected that.
Welcome to AutoLedger.
The Celica appeared at the Tokyo Motor Show in November 1970. Toyota presented it with a simple idea. Take the mechanics of a mid-range sedan, the Carina, and put a coupe body with sporty lines on top. The result was a car that felt special without costing a fortune. In Japan, the success was immediate. In the United States, where it arrived the following year, it was also a success. Americans had been buying huge, gas-guzzling muscle cars for years. The Celica arrived with a 4-cylinder engine, consumed much less fuel, and handled with an agility that the big American cars couldn't offer. In March 1977, 6 years and 4 months after the first one was manufactured, the 1 millionth Celica rolled off the assembly line at the Sutsumi plant. Toyota proudly announced it in an official statement. It seemed like the beginning of something that would never end. The Celica wasn't a car for just one type of person. The college student bought it because it was the sportiest car they could afford. The family man who had owned one in his 20s bought it again 15 years later. He already knew how well it performed. The car enthusiast bought it because he knew that under that hood there was real engineering, not just style. In Europe, especially in the UK and Spain, the Celica had a presence that went far beyond sales figures. It was the car you chose in 90s racing video games when you wanted a fast Japanese car. The one your friends recognized on the street even if they didn't know the exact model. What made it special wasn't just its performance. It was the feeling that Toyota had put something real into that car. A sports car built with Toyota's renowned reliability. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that combination was almost unique in its segment. But there was something more. Something no other car in its price range could offer. Between 1988 and 1994, the Toyota Celica achieved something no other Japanese manufacturer had ever accomplished, winning the World Rally Championship. Carlos Sainz achieved this feat in 1990 at the wheel of the GT4ST 165. 2 years later, he repeated the victory with the next generation. Juha Kankkunen won the 3rd title in 1993 and Didier Auriol the 4th in 1994. 4 World Drivers' Championships in 5 years, and all with the same name emblazoned on the side of the car, Celica GT4. What made this story truly remarkable wasn't just its competitive performance. The thing was, there was a street version with the same name that you could buy at a dealership. You drove it to work, and it bore the same emblem as the one that triumphed in the mud of Kenya or on the tarmac of Corsica. When Sainz won his first title in 1990, Toyota produced a special edition in his honor. 5,000 units worldwide, each with a numbered plaque. They sold out almost before they even reached the dealerships. Sales of the street-legal Celica in the United States that year approached 80,000 units. The reputation was solid. The name meant something tangible. It seemed impossible that something like that could die. At the 1995 Rally Catalunya, an FIA inspector found something that shouldn't have been there. Toyota had installed a hidden device in the turbocharger of its competition Celica, a trick so well designed that it was virtually undetectable. So ingenious that Max Mosley, the FIA president, described it as the most ingenious thing I've seen in 30 years of motorsport. It was a compliment, and it was also a condemnation. Toyota Team Europe was suspended for the remainder of 1995 and the entire 1996 season, a whole year out of the championship. The Celica had built its reputation on one idea: what you bought at the dealership had the same soul as what it won on the rally stage. That bond had just been tarnished, and within Toyota, something changed. Toyota returned to the World Rally Championship in 1997. Many fans expected to see the Celica back in action on the gravel stages. It was the car that had delivered 4 world titles to the brand. It seemed like the most logical choice. But when Toyota unveiled its new competition car, the Celica name was nowhere to be found. It was a Corolla. For most people, this was a minor detail. Within Toyota, it meant much more. After the ST205 scandal, the brand wanted to start a new chapter and leave behind any association with that controversy. On paper, the decision made sense, but something that had been years in the making had just broken. Until then, the rally-winning car and the one anyone could buy shared the same name. Each victory reinforced the prestige of the street-legal Celica. From then on, that connection vanished almost unnoticed. And while the Celica was slowly losing what made it different, another decision was already being prepared within Toyota, one that would prove even more important. In 1999, the 7th and final generation of the Celica arrived. The design was radical, more aggressive than ever. Toyota wanted to attract a younger generation of buyers, and for the first few months, it seemed the strategy might work. But many enthusiasts went straight for a GT4 version. They never found it. All-wheel drive was gone. Toyota had done the math. Developing and homologating a new generation with all-wheel drive for a segment that was selling less and less each year was a difficult investment to justify. From a business perspective, the decision was logical. The problem was something else entirely. The Celica had just lost what no rival could replicate: the feeling of driving a car directly connected to the World Rally Championship. It was still a good sports car, but it was no longer unique. At first, sales were reasonable. The design was eye-catching and the price remained competitive. However, year after year, the numbers began to decline. In 2005, its last full year in the United States, sales barely exceeded 3,000 units. Keeping the project alive no longer made sense for Toyota. In 2004, the brand announced that the Celica and the MR2 would disappear from the US market. It was the first sign that the end was near. 2 years later came the official explanation. New emissions regulations made adapting the model to justify a new homologation too expensive. When the last Celica rolled off the assembly line at the Sutsumi plant in 2006, the most important decision had already been made years earlier. There's something the Celica left behind that almost no one mentions when discussing its demise. The Toyota Supra was born from the Celica. The first version of the Supra in 1979 was simply called the Celica Supra. It was a stretched version of the second-generation Celica, with a 6-cylinder engine instead of 4, designed for those who wanted more power. Over time, the Supra became its own brand, but for years it shared DNA, name, and dealerships with the Celica. When the Celica disappeared in 2006, the Supra had already been off the market for years. Toyota had completely abandoned the affordable sports car segment. The brand that had proven itself capable of building the world's best rally cars in the 1990s left that segment without a farewell speech. What happened next would reveal exactly how much that decision had cost. The official version of why the Celica disappeared is this: the compact sports coupe market collapsed, sales fell below the break-even point, and Toyota couldn't justify the cost of updating the car for the new regulations. That's true, but it's the consequence, not the cause. The cause begins in 1995 at the Rally Catalunya. When the FIA discovered the ST205's trick, Toyota made a decision that seemed reasonable at the time. Instead of rebuilding the rally program with the Celica, it switched to the Corolla WRC, a competition car with no connection to any road-going model. With that move, Toyota disconnected the Celica from its most powerful raison d'etre. And 4 years later, when the seventh generation arrived without the GT4 and without a racing history to speak of, the car no longer had anything that made it irreplaceable. It was competent, it was reliable, it was affordable, but any other manufacturer could offer the same. The 2006 emissions regulations were the official reason for the closure. The decisions of 1995 and 1999 were the real cause. A car doesn't die when the factory closes. It dies when the brand stops believing in it. And the facts indicate that this happened long before the last Celica was manufactured, when Toyota chose not to defend what had made that car great at a time when it was still possible to do so. The clues were there as early as 1997. The Celica had disappeared from rallies. Nobody pointed it out then. Toyota phased out the Celica. First the United States at the end of the 2005 model year, then the rest of the world in 2006. The withdrawal was quiet. The last units were sold off from existing stock with small discounts, like any model at the end of its production run. No special farewell edition worldwide, no ceremony, the direct successor never arrived. For years, the affordable sports car segment remained empty in Toyota's lineup. In 2012, the GT86 appeared, developed in conjunction with Subaru. A lightweight, rear-wheel drive coupe with a 200-horsepower boxer engine. Many saw it as the spiritual successor to the Celica, although Toyota never used that name. It was a different philosophy for a different driver. Good at what it did, but without the racing history that the Celica had taken decades to build. The GT4s of the ST165, ST185, and ST205 generations have become cult classics. A well-preserved ST185 now fetches prices that would have seemed absurd 15 years ago. The approximately 2,500 ST205s produced are among the most sought-after Japanese cars of the 1990s by collectors, with examples exceeding $50,000 at auction. Even the most modest street-legal Celicas have increased in value. The seventh generation, the one Toyota retired without ceremony, now has active communities of enthusiasts in several countries who restore it and keep it alive. The market valued what Toyota decided wasn't worth defending. That says something about this industry. Cars that transcend spreadsheets do so because they connected with something deeper than a market segment. And that kind of connection doesn't disappear when the factory closes. The guy on the 90s poster was right about what he saw. The Celica was special because it had a real story behind it. Toyota destroyed that story from within before closing it down from the outside. Today, the GR Yaris wins rallies. The GR86 sells well. The brand that in the early 2000s decided that sports cars weren't profitable is now investing more than ever in exactly that. Sometimes brands need to lose something to understand its true value. If you found this interesting, I've included another video on screen that I'm sure you'll enjoy.